The Communist Party stands for freeing the American people of all private and public debt through the enactment of a debt jubilee. Now, this is really incredible because in America, communism, Marxism has become synonymous with like blue-haired liberals supporting Joe Biden or the LGBT movement or BLM, things of this nature. But if you actually look at the one true and only American Communist Party, the ACP, you can find their website, their social media and whatnot. The ACP is the only political party, the only political movement in the United States talking and having as the number one issue on their party program, the issue that Tucker Carlson brought up in this Ben Shapiro response as the number one greatest issue facing the American public and the American economy. Now, I think this is really important for a lot of reasons. Tucker Carlson did a segment on his show dedicated to destroying Ben Shapiro and the lies and the absolutely ludicrous things that he's been saying about Candace, about him, about the U.S.-Israeli relationship, so on and so forth. Needless to say, Tucker destroyed him. Not really a difficult task. But hidden deep into 44 minutes and 50 seconds into this masterclass on destruction of Zionist talking points, destruction of Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, AI Hasbara propaganda talking points, Tucker Carlson addressed what he believes is the largest issue facing the United States today. Now, I'm not going to, dwell too long on my thoughts on this before we watch the video. I will interject at certain points and add some commentary. But what I want you to understand here is just how little this issue is talked about. I don't just mean in today's society. I don't just mean like today, this issue is never talked about. But I'll ask you the question. Did you know that debt forgiveness and debt jubilees are actually ancient traditions that basically every civilization, every popular leader in every civilization have bestowed upon their people? Debt jubilees. Some of you might not, you might be hearing that and say, like, what is that? Is this like a special secret hidden move in a Monopoly game or something? Debt jubilees are simply the forgiving of people's debts. This was discussed quite openly in the Bible. Forgive them of their debts. That is the original translation of forgive them of their sins. Forgive them of their debts. And debts could mean many things. It could mean sins. It could mean, of course, financial debts. A lot of leaders throughout history, I'm talking about ancient empires, they interpreted this to not just mean forgiving people of their sins, but also forgiving people of their actual material, physical, monetary debts that had been imposed upon them by corrupt leaders, by financial oligarchs, feudal slaves having these debts imposed upon them. This is an ancient practice that has been forgiven across all civilizations, all peoples, but you don't hear about this. You don't hear this talked about in our history books. You don't hear it debated in the press. You don't hear politicians talking about this on Capitol Hill, despite the fact that we have an astonishingly high level of national debt. And by the way, 50% of every single dollar that we pay off on our national debt is going to who? It's going to an international elite of finance capitalists, the creditor class. Everyone talks about, well, who controls the world? The people who control the world, I would imagine, are the people who are siphoning 50% of every single dollar that we pay off on our national debt each and every day of this year and next year and however many years in perpetuity until we finally have some sort of a conclusion to this nonsense. The other thing I'll say before we watch this video, and I so appreciate Tucker for talking about this, is that this is something that Charlie Kirk was beginning to talk a lot about before he was assassinated. Tucker brings up that point. The first person I saw to bring up that point is a good friend of the show, Logo. Logo, you might know him from Twitter. He posted this on September 16th. He said, I will say my estimation of Charlie Kirk went from 0 to 100 just because in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he references the credit rentier domination of our economy and points to the Levitical Jubilee year as a solution. That's my only political issue, so he's good with me. If you can acknowledge this material reality, then that is all that really matters. That is a base that can be built up, and the rest of the issues are trivial in comparison. He could have become very dangerous, referring to Charlie, in the coming decade if they hadn't taken him out. Imagine if TPUSA chapters were assigning Hudsons and forgive them of their debts, which is a book I have in the room right beside me. If the right want to turn him into a martyr for hate speech laws in the defense of Zionism, I believe I am on fighting for his reputation and his soul by pushing back and saying no to this. I don't hate him, never hated him. I am even on record saying that he's clearly smarter than most leftist people in the same position. Kirk would dogwalk Hassan in a debate. And I am positive, for instance, I think he had a lot of good in him, and I am capable of forgiving him being stuck with his, quote, great allies. I believe in a world where TPUSA joins the ACP. Really? Who else do they have? They're going to back Pam Bondi's hate speech laws now? Can't they taste their own vomit in their mouths with that? I think the rank and file are going to become much more radicalized by this. Now, that's a lot of information, but what he is referring to there is, well, I mean, as I just illuminated, that it's an ancient tradition of many civilizations, and it is quite literally biblical to forgive the people of their debts and to do these sorts of annual debt jubilees. But also, what he was talking about with Hudson was a reference to the Professor Michael Hudson, who many on Wall Street, by the way, point out is the only economist in America who actually can paint an appropriate picture as to how the U.S. economy and how U.S. imperialism operate and how the dollar is maintained as a tool of global hegemon to fund imperialism, not just to fund imperialism and to shore up the dollar, but also to keep certain countries, I guess, in a chokehold, a stranglehold by the U.S. Now, the other thing that he mentioned, and as far as Michael Hudson goes, yes, he is a Marxist. Michael Hudson is a Marxist, so kind of interesting that so many people who hate Marxists and Wall Street will recognize that they might not agree with him being a Marxist. They might not agree with his economic outlook, but they definitely agree with the fact that he's correct about U.S. debt and the U.S. dollar and what is going on here with imperialism. The other thing that was referenced here is the American Communist Party. Now, the American Communist Party, different than the CPUSA, the Communist Party of the USA, which is this like Democrat Kamala Harris supporting party. American Communist Party adopted their program on October 12th, 2024. And the number one issue on the American Communist Party's program is the cancellation of all debts. The Communist Party stands for freeing the American people of all private and public debt through the enactment of a debt jubilee. Now, this is really incredible because in America, communism, Marxism has become synonymous with like blue-haired liberals supporting Joe Biden or the LGBT movement or BLM, things of this nature. But if you actually look at the one true and only American Communist Party, the ACP, you can find their website, their social media and whatnot. The ACP is the only political party, the only political movement in the United States talking and having as the number one issue on their party program, the issue that Tucker Carlson brought up in this Ben Shapiro response as the number one greatest issue facing the American public and the American economy and the future of the American people. So let's take a listen to what Tucker has to say here, because I think it's extremely important.
Well, maybe because if you keep talking about the so-called social issues, which are not limited to abortion and pornography and gay marriage, the trans issue, they get pretty quickly to economics, to usury, to lending money and interest. And most people, including me, are not against lending money and interest, conceptually. But it depends on what interest rate it's being loaned at. So there are payday loans in this country that are 600% annually.
600% annually. And you have no one talking about this. It's usury, plain and simple. No one talks about that. It's like promoted. Like this is those companies probably get Super Bowl ads.
600% interest annually? And who's taking payday loans in this? Well, poor people are. And they're never getting out of it. They're car loans. They're credit card loans. There's private credit. Used to call it loan sharking. At exorbitant rates. Rates so high that people will never get out from under them. They're enslaved by it. It's called debt slavery. It's 100% real.
Debt slavery. 100% real. It's been a real thing throughout all of history, but no one talks about it. Can't find a single section of a U.S. history textbook in any American high school that talks about this issue, talks about debt jubilees, talks about any of this stuff. But Tucker says this is the most important issue. And it's really not all that abstract. I mean, if you think about it, how do farmers pay for their tractors and all their farming equipment? How do they pay for that? Think about it. They take out loans. Data shows that 50% of all farms had less than 10,000 in sales. 80% of all farms had less than 100,000 in sales. And only 8% of all farms had sales of $500,000 or more. Those are the big corporate farms. The farmers that are getting screwed over are the farmers who have small farms, small plots of land. They're not backed by BlackRock or Monsanto or things like this. In fact, they're indebted to Caterpillar, to Monsanto, to BlackRock, to the major, private capital firms that give out these either the equipment or the loans that can be utilized to purchase this equipment. And guess what? These farmers are then saddled with 50-year loans, 30-year loans to pay off the construction equipment that they are using to feed you each and every day, and they make virtually no money. The money that they do make, they have to pay the loans off with. Think about that. What about truck drivers? Anyone think about truck drivers? How do 18-wheeler truck drivers actually pay for those massive trucks? Well, in some cases, you have two varying things here going on. In some cases, you have owner-operated truckers. In some cases, you have truckers that do not own the trucks that they utilize on a daily basis. They don't make as much money. The ones that are owner-operated, they do make more money because they own their truck, but do they really own it? Or does some mega corporation own the 18-wheeler truck, and the truck driver has to pay 30, 50-year loans on the 18-wheeler that they'll never actually pay off, and they will be enslaved by the debtors for life? Think about it. And repeat that into every single blue-collar job, every single non-college educated job that we have in the United States. And tell me, is that a system that can become sufficient, that can really last for the foreseeable future without our entire country getting addicted to drugs, being put on SSRIs, being depressed, so on and so forth, losing their homes, having no money? When list goes on and on. Not being able to afford home ownership until you're like 70 years old, and then you get a 50-year loan, as Trump is now floating the idea of with Mr. Bill Pulte or whatever his name is, and now you're going to be 120 years old when you finally pay off your home loan. It's insane.
That's not an ideological point. It's just an obvious observation. And it was one of the observations that Charlie Kirk was making on a daily basis before he was assassinated, which is interesting. And it's that kids are buying food on credit. Buy now, pay later. That's credit. You're paying interest on that, whether they call it that or not. Late fees. People are loaning you money at a much higher interest rate than, say, rich people are borrowing money. And that's bad because it's really hard to get out of it. And if you're wondering why the average American homebuyer, American-born homebuyer, is almost 40 years old, when the year I graduated from college, it was 28. How did that happen? People are in too much debt. This is probably, if it isolated in a world with a lot of issues, a lot of pressing issues, debt for young people is probably the number one issue, which is to say it's the number one thing that is destroying them and making it impossible for them to get married and have children, which Ben Shapiro...
By the way, the whole reason why Tucker brought up this issue is because Ben Shapiro, he said, retirement in the United States is a stupid idea, and we shouldn't have retirement funds for people. We shouldn't have Social Security, essentially. And he also said that if you can't afford to live where your family grew up, the culture you were raised in, then maybe you should just go live somewhere else. Maybe you should just go move to like the middle of the desert. Maybe you should go move to Botswana or something like that. That's what Ben Shapiro said. So, Clearly a guy that doesn't care about the cohesion of our country. Clearly a guy that doesn't care about, the long-standing familial ties that so many Americans have but are losing to the land in America. He doesn't care. He just sees America as some like Byzantine labyrinth of insurance companies and loan sharks and rentierist, profit-seeking corporations and landlords and law firms that are just, the only goal of this is to just like rape the American worker and squeeze as much money out of them as possible.
Goals he cared about. And that's the conversation that they absolutely don't want to have. So if you say, well, Maduro, whatever his many faults, probably stole the election. It looks that way to me. I don't know, but it looks that way. People say he's bad. I'm okay. I believe you. He's bad. But he doesn't have that. And that's a good thing. And Ben Shapiro's like, I don't give a shit. Shut up. He's a communist. It makes you wonder how we're defining communist here. Because, of course, in the United States, communist no longer means someone who believes Marx and Engels.
Based.
There's nothing to do with academic theory. That's all gone. Communist in the United States is a synonym for someone who seeks to rot a society from within and destroy it.
Based. But now we need to go one step further, Tucker. We need to have on the chairman of the American Communist Party, Haz al-Din. Look, as much as I enjoyed this segment and as much as I'd enjoyed to be on Tucker's show again, I'm going to take this opportunity on the fraction of a fraction percent off chance that Tucker or someone who is one of Tucker's producers sees this. This would be an excellent opportunity now, after having discussed the issue of debt and debt slavery and the debt jubilees on his show, to either have on Haz al-Din, the American Communist Party chairman, who the number one party program item for the party is the cancellation of debt in the United States, a debt jubilee, or to have on Michael Hudson. I don't think he's ever talked to Michael Hudson before. I could be wrong about that. Both Marxists, both understand the issue of debt and are the only two political forces fighting against the debt enslavement of America. This would be an excellent time to either have on Haz al-Din, invite him out, great guy, or Michael Hudson, another great guy, extremely learned man. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.